gift of Troy is a fabulous fabric from the land of the five rivers.
Years ago, when we came to Los Angeles, I really believed that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future.
We are back, man, for another edition with Pharoah and Ray. And I was gonna say something. I was gonna say that special announcement, but we're gonna wait on that. We're gonna wait on that. Yeah, it almost slipped out. But this is something new. We don't usually do this. We usually like to be with the people. We go live, which we're gonna do soon. We're gonna do that this Saturday. It's gonna be fun. Especially after all the joint practices with the 49ers and the 49ers game coming up. It's going to be fun. But what's up with you, Ray, man? How's it going?
Everything's good. I'm just excited for this joint practice coming up. We got the 49ers coming into town. Mm-hmm. We finally get to see some live action. We finally get to see the Raiders put the pads on and go up against another team. So Sunday couldn't come soon enough. There's a ton of battles to get into, but I'll save that for the show. What about you, man? How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. I'm trying to get into, the Raiders and training camp updates pretty much. Okay. And there's a bunch of updates. There's some good news, a lot of good news. We're going to be positive today. We're not going to be negative. We're going to be positive. Even if there are going to be some negative news, we're going to still break it to you, gently. We're not going to try to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, we are.
But
yeah, we are.
But like I said, Raiders training camp update, and we'll start with the Raiders injury update, but specifically the rookies. And I wanted to start talking about Tyree Wilson because they drafted number 7 overall. We know this guy's wingspan is huge. We know all the talent. We know this guy could be another bookend DN pass rusher right next to Max Crosby. But there was a reason why he dropped to number 7. And there was a little injury issue that he had to take care of. He had surgery on his foot after suffering an injury during the college football season, and he still hasn't shown up yet. Are you concerned?
No, and I'll tell you why is because one, we were predetermined. We kind of knew that this injury was lingering. He was coming into the NFL with this injury, and me and you had a conversation off air one night right after we drafted him, and we were talking about this foot injury, and hopefully it doesn't prolong into week 1, week 2. Mm-hmm. But to be honest with you, that from all reports, it looks like that's what it's going to be. It doesn't look like he's going to get a ton of significant time in training camp. Mm-hmm. So by the time week 1 rolls around, you're probably going to be ramping him up for in-game action. So that's my only concern. I would have loved to see him get an off season where he gets to work hands-on with Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, really get in the mix, get some preseason games in there. You know what I mean? Get up to speed, know what it's like to go up against the NFL left tackle, right tackle, wherever they line him up. Mm-hmm. And so overall, I'm not majorly concerned because the Raiders do have Chandler Jones on the opposite side of Max Crosby. But this is going to be one of those years where they're just going to ease him into this defense because this is the big picture star player that they went out and got in the draft. So overall, no, I'm not too discouraged about it. I would obviously like to see a healthy Tyree Wilson, but I'm going to trust the process.
And I forgot to add that McDaniels didn't give him no timetable to return. After the reporters, the beat writers were asking him when he could possibly return, he didn't want to give any actual date. Which, if you remember, Peter King had that article about being in the draft room with McDaniels and the whole front office, and there was a special part where he was speaking to Tyree Wilson and about his injury, and he was kind of giving him that talk, and like, you want to make sure you say this to the media. You don't want to put any actual date on when you could come back, because he's well aware that people are going to be, if he missed that date, then everybody's going to be talking about that, and people are going to be talking about his injury and yada yada yada. So I think that's just McDaniels giving coach speak at the end of the day. Like, he's just trying to protect his player. But this is where the good news comes in. Albert Breer recently went to the Raiders training camp, and he learned some interesting things while he was there, and he's reporting that don't be surprised, within the next couple weeks, he believes that Tyree Wilson will be coming to the Raiders and joining the team in training camp, which Albert Breer is a pretty solid source. He's a pretty good source, so
that would be huge.
Yeah, within the next couple weeks. So I'd be excited, but there's more good news. Byron Young was able to be activated off the physically unable to perform list. So he missed some time. We don't know what the injury was, but he's healthy now. And he was actually able to play with the first team on 11-11 team drills. What do you project with him? Do you feel like he can actually be a solid contributor to this D line? Is he going to start? Like, do you feel like he has a chance in that room?
As far as a contributor, absolutely. I think he has all the traits. I think he has good hands. He has the ability to block, get after the passer, run defense is adequate. He's good. So I think that Byron Young has a real opportunity to make a splash this rookie year, along with a lot of other rookies, and we'll kind of get into that later. But, there's a lot of question marks at the defensive tackle position right now. You've got a Jerry Tillery, Neil Farrell, and Matthew Butler. Are those guys even locks to make the roster this year? There's a lot of moving and shaking going on in that defensive tackle room. And right now, with guys being out, there's guys stepping up and taking advantage of reps. Now, Byron Young missed some time, but we haven't even played one.
Your audio went out. Your audio went out. But yeah, man, I'm pretty excited to see Byron Young out there, man, with the guys, man. I think that he's one of those guys I think that the Raiders believe in, as far as obviously stopping the run. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? We're good.
Yeah.
All right. Where did you lose me at?
Just keep going.
Byron Young. Okay. Yeah. So Byron Young, he's coming back at a perfect time, right? So there's a lot of guys that are missing opportunity, but we haven't even played one preseason game yet. So if Byron Young can kind of get back into the mix, really put a name in there, I think he could contribute early. And I think that's going to be a tone that you're going to see throughout the season, is that this rookie class is really contributing to this team.
Yeah, man, I'm excited because we know that his strength coming into the draft was stopping the run. Like, even though he's not a overly big guy, he has a good skill set in stopping the run right off the bat. And that's something that, we know that these defensive coaches on this team, they really value on the D-line. They like the big D-linemen that can stop the run. But they also believe in his pass rushing ability. And I think I think if he has a chance to start, I think that 3 technique spot can open up for him. If he kills it in camp from here on out, I think he has a chance. But we'll stick to, we'll stick with the defense, man. Let's talk about the defense. I think it was interesting to see Jerry Tillery at DN. They've been moving around, and they've the beat writers have seen him move around the D line and at DN, and he has experience playing with the Chargers. I think he had 54 games where they kind of moved around a little bit. So I think that's interesting that they're kind of moving him around. So they're trying to see some value in him, and we'll see how that shakes out. Also, the defense, man. The defense has been killing it, man. Last Friday or Saturday, they were reported to have 8 interceptions.
Yep.
Man, they've been killing it. I hope it's a great sign for the defense and not a bad sign for our offense. But we'll figure that out within the next couple of days with the joint practices coming up, and obviously the preseason game. We'll see how this Raider defense start looking against different players and different schemes, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But one of the biggest additions has been safety Marcus Epps.
Yeah.
You got Nate Hobbs calling him a general out there. He knows the defense inside and out. This guy just came to the Raiders, and he immediately has the respect of that DB room. And one of the biggest impacts he's having is taking Trayvon Moehrig under his wing. And from what they're talking about, man, Albert Breer, which I mentioned earlier, he's saying that Trayvon Moehrig is pretty much dominating the first couple weeks of training camp. And for him to use dominating, that's a pretty strong word, but it's him and Marcus Epps. They've been talking about the chemistry between them two, and Moehrig is looking like a different guy. He looks bigger. I don't know if you see him he looks like he added some muscle. How do you feel about this safety room shaping up right now? They're like one of the biggest strengths out of training camp right now.
Well, he's got to get better, right? I mean, last year was rough, and we really need you invest a second round into a guy like Trayvon Moehrig, and he's got to step his game up. And I'm glad that he's got under the wing of Marcus Epps. I'm glad Marcus Epps is walking into that leadership role, bringing over that mentality similar to what Marcus Peters is doing. I heard the defensive back coach today. He was talking about Trayvon Moehrig and just how they simplified the defensive scheme, which I think is huge news for everybody. Last year, a lot of guys were overthinking. They just looked confused out there. You know what I mean? And the communication was wrong. This year, you could tell, especially with the production and training camp, that guys are flying around and they're making plays. So if the entire defensive back room is flying around and causing turnovers, it makes me wonder, man, what is this front seven looking like? What is the Robert Spillane's looking like? What is the pressure up front by those guys looking like? Because if the ball's getting out quick, they're going to reads that they're not necessarily wanting to go to, and the defense is coming away with turnovers. That's a great sign overall for the Raiders defense.
And what I like hearing about Trayvon Moehrig, it's coming at a perfect time. It's coming at a perfect time. He had a down year. He was playing in a new defense, but the things I'm hearing, he's playing fast. He's playing with confidence, and people are projecting him to make a really big jump this year, which is really good to hear. And we talked about the 8 interceptions. He's one of the guys that are picking off, interceptions off the quarterback, unfortunately. But we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, but that's a common theme that you're hearing, right? Like you're hearing not only Trayvon Moehrig, you're hearing about the Jacorian Pennett's, you're hearing about all these players, the Robert Spillane's. These guys are playing confident. These guys are playing with a new energy that the Raiders defense hasn't had in a long time.
And speaking of Spillane, pretty much he's having the same impact to that linebacker room, and he's doing the same thing to what Epps is doing with Moehrig. Spillane is kind of doing with Diablo,
right?
And he's kind of like bringing a little bit of, he's kind of solidifying that linebacker room. I hope it's not something I'm going to talk up too much until I really see it, because Spillane is still a journeyman linebacker. He's coming in. He gave him a 2-year contract, but Brian Flores was talking about how he was one of the main coaches that gave him rave reviews to the Raider coaches here. So that's what made the Raiders kind of go after him, on top of just scouting him in general. But I think that Spillane being in that room, and if Diablo can take that next step, I think Diablo's like biggest wild card right now. If he can take that next step this year, if he could just be solid, you know what I mean? Because solid, if he can clean up those pass coveraging snaps if he can just play well in that area, I think it'll be a big, because we know that the strength in this team, that D-line, man, that D-line with hopefully Chandler Jones and Tyree Wilson and obviously Max Crosby and the new talent that we're going to have up the middle. I think that D-line, if they can take that next step, and I know you mentioned the coach, you're a big fan of the D-line coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm really excited about this defense, but
no, I think when you look at the totality of what they did, right, and you talk about every offseason, you talk about bringing in veteran leadership to train up the young guys. Look at every single level of this defense. It's proven guys, and to kind of backtrack on your comment about Robert Spillane being a journeyman, I would maybe say like journeyman may not be the proper term, just because he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's improved every single year. Last year, you really seen him take on his own role. And I think right now he's kind of peaking in his career, to where last year he played, I believe it was 15 or 16 games as a starter. And now he's walking into that, now I'm the leader, I'm the guy type of role. So was he undrafted? Yeah. Careful what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Careful. Everybody will kind of get what that means here in a little bit. But no, man, you look at the edge. You look at, boom, a Chandler Jones and a Max Crosby, 2 veterans. You look at the Robert Spillane's now linebacker. Divine Diablo, he's got NFL experience now. But when I'm talking about the veterans, Max, Chandler, Spillane in the linebacker room, you got Marcus Peters on the outside with 32 career interceptions. You've got a Marcus Epps who just went to the Super Bowl. You've got veteran leadership and veteran talent at every single level of this defense, and that's something that I'm really excited heading into the season.
Yeah, speaking about Jacorian Bennett, man, the guy out there, from what I'm hearing, he's looking like the real deal Holyfield, man. He looks like he has a really good chance of starting on the outside with, especially he's making the most of his opportunities with Brandon Facyson being out. I'm hearing that he has good cover skills. He already knows what he's doing, which is good that's a really good sign for a rookie corner. For one of the things said about you is to say that you know what you're doing, and he has the speed. I love this part right here, and Al Davis would be proud. He has the speed to cover up mistakes. He has the speed being the key word. But yeah, that's huge. And I think, man, iron sharpens iron at the end of the day. So he's going against one of the best receivers in the game, and a solid receiving core. And on top of that, like, you have Marcus Peters, where he's pretty much being a sponge. And you've heard him in press conference talk about how being in this DB room and learning from the other players around him. Man, I'm liking what I'm hearing about from Jacorian Bennett. Do you see him being a day one starter for the Raiders?
I do. And this reminds me a lot of Nate Hobbs' rookie year, when we were starting to get these reports that this guy's just different. The entire team is talking about Jacorian. Him lined up on the outside. He's in Marcus Peters' ear. He doesn't leave his side. And a lot of those things can kind of be like media fluff this time of year. But when you listen to Jacorian Bennett speak, he's just this mature young man who loves a game of football. And those are the players that Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels love to bring in. And you get a guy with that kind of speed. There was a report that teammates on the Raiders say that if it was step-by-step foot race, Jacorian Bennett is the fastest player on the team. So you love to hear that. And I just think he plays with that passion that you look for, right, as a boundary corner. So I'm excited to see him play on the outside with Marcus Peters. I want to see Nate Hobbs move back inside of the slot, be aggressive in run defense, kind of watch the eyes of the quarterback and make plays, something that he was really good. The Raiders asked him to go out and play boundary corner because, let's just be honest, they didn't have the talent. They needed Nate Hobbs to go out to the boundary. So now that you've added talent to that room, slide him back into the position that he's comfortable. Let Jacorian get his rookie year out of the way on the outside, and then you're talking about the future's pretty bright for this defensive back room.
And I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
It's not going to be a crazy prediction. I'm going to make our starting nickel corners. Marcus Peters, Jacorian Bennett, and then Nate Hobbs.
Yeah.
I think the real battle is going to happen. Who's going to take that backup nickel spot? I think Amik is really fighting for a spot. And Tyler Hall, he made a really good impression on this coaching staff. The team, Raider Nation, like we've seen, he held it down last year when he came in off the streets, pretty much. And he's both Tyler Hall and Meek Robinson are kind of fighting for one spot. And then you got Duke Shelley, you got David Long Jr., and then Brandon Facyson. Who kind of comes out that bunch? We won't know until the training camp is over, preseason, and all that good stuff. So that's what that's for. But cornerback, it's a nice little competition going in there. But I think that first 3 corner spot right now, I think those 3 players right now are sticking out, and I think that's a good thing for the Raiders.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. There's going to be good players, like really good, potentially starting corners being cut from this team. Yeah. Which honestly, it kind of sounds bad if you're a Raiders fan, like, well, we're cutting a starting corner, but it just is it's a credit to how we've built this defensive back room. And I don't want to give them their flowers before they even take a rep in a preseason game, right? Like These guys have to go out there and earn it. Jacorian, Marcus, Nate, all those guys need to go out there and earn it. But on top of that, Amik, Sam Webb, Tyler Hall, Duke Shelley. But when you just talk about that room, there's talent there that hasn't been there in a long time.
I forgot about Sam Webb too. Yeah. So it's this is a good problem to have.
Bryce Crosby, a lot of the players came out and said that Nate Hobbs came out vocally and said that Bryce Crosby's that guy that goes under the radar and that he has that dog in him as well. Just like he was speaking of himself, Nate Hobbs.
Yeah.
And so, look, it's just going to be fun. I think that there's going to be a lot of good football players come out of this Raiders defense.
Right, and the Raiders are going to have some tough cuts, especially on the
Yeah.
defensive side of the football. Even the D-line, I think that there's going to be some good players out of there. But we'll say this: from what the reports are saying, that middle of the defense looks like it's improved.
That's a good thing.
You know what I mean?
It's a really good thing.
Still early, but training camp, the way players are performing right now, the back end. When you talk about that middle of the defense, you're talking about the safeties, the linebackers, and obviously the D-line. So we'll see how that shakes out. We got.
I will say this though, not to cut you off. The linebackers are still a bit shaky. I like Robert Spillane. I like his ability to go downhill. Divine Diablo, he always gets hyped up for pass coverage. I like his run coverage. His run fits a lot better than I like his pass coverage. Yeah. So when it comes to pass coverage, that's just going to have to be a wait and see for me. But yeah, from all reports, it has gotten better. Is that a credit to what the Raiders offense is running right now? There's just a lot of gray area. So I'm excited to get these 3 preseason games on film. That way we can go back and really see where these guys are live action.
Right. Now, we talked about the defense and how well they're playing and they're getting interceptions.
Yeah.
But they're getting interceptions on the quarterback of the Raiders. You know what I mean? Obviously, Jimmy G has been struggling, or he's rusty, depending on who you talk to. And, Josh McDaniels, he talked about how he's not worried, and he has a reason. I mean, like the fact that Jimmy G hasn't played any meaningful football games since last December. He hasn't played in he hasn't really been a part of any of the offseason. I mean, he's been there in spirit, but he wasn't able to build that chemistry that you would want being out there on the practice field. The good news is that from what I'm hearing, he did spend a lot of time with Devontae Adams while he was rehabbing.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like I said, iron sharpens iron. You got to be out there in the football field, and I think this is where he's kind of getting out the kinks. And I think earlier, if you want to bring up, like, are you worried about Jimmy G and his struggles or how rusty he is?
Nah, I think a lot of the interception stuff too. These reports are coming from people who are really far away. I think the numbers are accurate, but I think the situation. I think the Raiders are practicing a lot of situational football. I read a report that a lot of the interceptions came on, the 7-on-7 drills. And they told Jimmy Garoppolo not to go to his first read, but go to his second and third option. And that the defense also knew the calls. So the defense knows where the ball is going. It's going to go to the second and third option, and they're reading and reacting and kind of sitting on coverage. So a lot of this stuff, like, I don't buy into it 110%. I love that the defense is going out there and getting their hand on the football. And one thing to be said of that is there is a real energy that is taking place on the defensive side of the football, regardless if it's 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, third red zone, third down, whatever the case may be. The defense is buying into that energy. Regardless, they're getting the interception and they're celebrating, and that is becoming contagious. It's spreading throughout the entire defense, and that's what you love to see. As far as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, no, I want practice to put Jimmy Garoppolo in bad situations and make him work his way out of it. So yeah, if he's throwing interceptions in practice, that's what practice is for. You get put in bad situations, you rep those. And yeah, if the Raiders defense is improved, yeah, these situations are going to happen. So I'd rather us get this out of the way. And there's a reason why I'm okay with it. And we'll kind of get to it in the last section of our show tonight as to why I think it's okay to let him go out there and make mistakes as opposed to not letting him make mistakes. Just a little teaser for the end of the show. But no, I'm excited for Jimmy Garoppolo, to be honest with you. Is he going to blow you away? Is he going to push the ball downfield? No. But I'm just excited to see another signal caller, and I'm excited to see his development in the offense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm gonna stay positive. It's too early to be negative right now. So
I know you want to. I know you want to.
Hey, look, it's not a secret that I haven't been the biggest Jimmy G fan for obvious reasons, because obviously I just don't think his ceiling is as high as the other quarterbacks in the AFC. I feel like we're gonna have to have a lot on our team.
And I would agree with you. I just want to put that out there. I would definitely agree with you.
But that being said, I do see a way where he can be successful on this team with this offense. I see the connection between him and McDaniels. So I hope it works out. I hope he's the best quarterback quarterback since Rich Gannon. We'll just say Rich Gannon to play it safe. But speaking of quarterbacks, we'll be even more positive. Aidan O'Connell.
Yeah.
He's from what the reports are saying, he's been turning a lot of heads at camp for his maturity, his accuracy, and his understanding at the line of scrimmage, which are great signs for a young QB to come in this offense. The offense that we seen last year were veterans that have been in the league for so long. Over here, like what did Devontae Adams say last season, beginning of the season? He said it's like it was like learning Mandarin, like learning another language. And it's really good to see that the Raiders they might have a guy out there, but this is another guy that I have my reservations with, because even though we're not going to question his ability to throw the ball, and which obviously is a strength with them talking about his accuracy, his arm, and all that good stuff. I think one of the reasons why he dropped so low in the draft is because his mobility,
right? And
I think that's still. You're gonna have to have you're gonna have to have a great O-line for him to be successful.
Well, you look at our quarterback room as a whole, and you got a lot of statues back there. There's not a lot of mobility. Now, me and you, we have a similar taste in quarterback. We like those guys who are athletic, who can stretch the field, kind of like where the modern NFL is kind of going to, and that's not the Raiders quarterback room. So the offensive line needs to come prepared. Those guys up front need to be dialed in. I know we all brought all the starters back. They need to be playing very well. But to go back to Aidan O'Connell, he's like a dark horse candidate to watch in the preseason because of all the excitement on the defensive side of the football, because of the Trey Tuckers, because of the Michael Mayers. There's so many things to watch for this preseason. And then you have Aidan O'Connell, which is just kind of slid under the radar a little bit for me. So I'm excited to watch him get significant reps in the preseason. I'm excited to see his confidence, you know what I mean? His ability to move the football down the field. Does he have an understanding? So those are all exciting things to look out for this week.
Yeah. Because he's going to be playing against a totally different defense and a good team, a good defense, totally different players. And which I hope the Raiders do, they give him plenty of time in preseason.
Yeah.
He should be playing most of the game, if not all. I know we got Chase Garbers back there. I don't want to see Brian Hoyer out there at all.
I would be okay to watch Aidan O'Connell play 3 quarters.
Yeah. And then give Garbers maybe a quarter.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think there should be any reason why Brian Hoyer should be out there.
Because look, if you can give Aidan O'Connell 9 quarters heading into the regular season, that's huge. 9 real quarters of taking this offensive, seeing live reps, getting all that film, maybe trying things that he's uncomfortable with and getting that on film. The benefits are endless. Yeah. And then, man, this rookie class, man, it's early signs looking good right now. And another, he wasn't drafted this year, but another key note from training camp is the fact that Zamir White looks like a guy out there. He looks pretty good out there. He looks like he's improved. I think his pass catching still needs to be improved, but from what I'm hearing, his pass blocking is improved. What I like, this is one of the big keys, is that he's looking decisive. So the vocabulary tonight, Pharaoh.
Decisive. He's out there. He's hitting the hole hard. He knows he's comfortable with his blocking scheme. I think Zamir White, that's another guy that I actually want to see a lot in preseason.
Yeah.
And, if he plays well, that makes
it turns the heat up on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I still want Josh Jacobs out there. But then at the end of the day, like, if you got a guy like Zamir White that's playing lights out, let's say if he's playing lights out in training camp and preseason, then you're a little bit more comfortable. He's still an improving player, but I think that all signs are pointing to him being a really good player.
Well, Raiders media is also good too. They have a franchise running back, a star running back, the best running back of the league last year, who's not at the facility. So what do? We alluded to it on last show. You never want to get coaches comfortable with seeing another guy's number. So what is the media going to do? What is the Raiders organization going to do? They're going to build Zamir White's stock. And who's going to hear that? Josh Jacobs' team. The more and more he's away from that team, you're turning the burner up slowly on Josh Jacobs' camp to get him back into the building. So we'll see. We'll see how much of it is real, because you can't hide from the tape for too long, and Zamir White's gonna have to go out there and show that he's gotten better.
Yeah, and I've heard that like they brought in running backs to try out, so whatever that means, they're trying to get some depth. I think Austin Walter, he was a running back in that room. I think he's out for the year. He got hurt.
And it makes me wonder, like, what Sincere McCormick. That's another guy I'm really excited to watch this preseason. Guy who got a lot of hype last year towards ACL. Sincere McCormick's coming in. But yeah, the Raiders will work Britton Brown also. But the running back room is very interesting. What do we have in Sincere? Is he one of those guys that does it look as good in practice as it does when it's time for the game? And so there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, facts. 100%. Yeah, it's going to be a lot to look forward to, like the O-line competition. On specifically the right side. That left side is pretty much set from center. Andre James, Dylan Parham, and Cole Miller. That's where we don't have to talk about them. But that right side there's competition from that right guard spot to the right tackle spot, and with the guard spot, Alex Bars and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it, Greg Van Roten. Roten.
Yep.
I was gonna say Rotten, but
no, that would be wrong.
Roten, but yeah, there's a competition there, and then you got some outside guys like Moody out there too as well. But I think what I'm hearing, it's between Alex Bars and Roten, so we'll see how that shakes out as training camp goes. And
just a little bit disappointing because I really wanted Natane Moody to go in there and compete.
Yeah, because you wanted to.
He's a little bit nasty, a little bit mean streak to him. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of football to be played.
You always want the player that has the higher upside. You know what I mean? Yeah, you definitely want the player that has the higher upside.
But they lean heavily. Carmen Bursillo leans heavily on veteran leadership. So that's why he likes the Alex Bars. He likes the Van Roten. So maybe not my flavor, but we'll see. He had some success last year developing this offensive line. So I'm trusting his process moving forward.
But also a theme with the O-line, they pretty much brought everybody back.
Yep.
So they want to keep. They know with O-line especially, because it's a team, you know what I mean, and they need that chemistry. They need all five of those guys to be on the same page. So familiarity is going to be a big part of the O-line going into this year. And if we can, Alex Bars, I'm not a huge. I mean, as a run blocker, he's fine, but like as a starting O-line, I'm not sure if that's going to be, good for the Raiders. But
I don't want to see Alex Bars and Chris Jones line up with each other. That's for sure.
Right. But what might affect the right guard spot is the right tackle spot. There's a competition over there, but it's going to be between Jermaine Illuminor and Thayer Mumford, and Mumford has kind of been winning that battle so far. He's kind of like, I think last week he took most of the starting reps with the first team. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. They're going back and forth. Mumford's not too happy about it. I heard he's over here pouting on the sideline and all that good stuff. But
me and Illuminor?
Oh yeah, Illuminor. I mean, Illuminor was kind of like really not taking.
I was gonna say, I hope we don't have two guys pouting on the right side.
Yeah. But what the thing is that they also seen that Illuminor took some snaps at right guard too as well. Yeah. So that's why I brought that up, is the fact that obviously we're talking about the O-line on the right side, but if let's say Thayer takes that position, does that move Illuminor to right guard because you want to put your best O-lineman out there on the field, or what does that do?
Well, I mean, if Thayer Mumford rightfully beats out Jermaine, I would be more than happy to swing Jermaine Illuminor inside.
Right.
Because Alex Bars, I don't think he's the pass protector that Jermaine is.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it would benefit. I'm curious to see about, Thayer Mumford. Carmen Bursillo had the interview today, and he talked about how he wants to get a rotation in case, push comes to shove and they're in a tight situation and they've got to move some guys around. And this is a theme that we've seen last year, right? So this isn't anything new. They moved guys all over the offensive line last year. And I think they just want to get those guys familiar with multiple positions. And, hey, if Thayer Mumford can go out there and win the spot, I know Carmen was talking about the ability to make your keys and reads. And I'm curious to see with Thayer's development, his ability to really be able to visualize those defensive line games that go on, and his ability to read edge rushers and blitzers and a corner or safety coming down in the box, or, you know, all the things that you have to deal with being a right tackle. I'm curious to see his development on that. So if their Mumford has improved, he has all the length. And you got to remember, this is a guy who was, if he would have came out a year before, this is a guy who was considered to maybe go in the first round. And so if the Raiders can go and get a value pick in the 7th round and have a starting right tackle for the foreseeable future, again, it just goes to what Dave Ziegler's doing and showing his talents of finding guys in the draft, turning over every rock, looking where other teams aren't willing to look, and grabbing some real talent.
And I think if it's close, I think they're going to lean towards Thayer because they see the long-term possibility.
You think?
Let's be honest. I think they're going to do that because it's a cheaper option too. So if you're able to get talented, why would you keep him on the bench? It's only going to be a value to the Raiders if they keep him on the field.
You think
if it's close? I'm just saying if it gets close.
I was going to say, what if Thayer is slightly below the talent, which I think he is right now. Before me seeing preseason games, I would say Jermaine Illuminor is a better right tackle. But if that margin of difference isn't that much, could you see them kicking Jermaine inside?
Yeah.
Even if it is lesser value.
Because what's going to make him better is him being out there and having snaps and then also being around that O-line. You know what I mean? And the more he's around that O-line with the Illuminor, with the James, the Parhams, and the Millers, it's just going to make them that much. It's going to make him that much better as a player, and then that O-line better too as well. So I think if it's close, I'm just saying if it's close.
I think his mentality is different too this year because last year he was open about how horrible his mental was, like his mental mind. Like he said, I just went in a dark place. Like I struggled bad mentally last year. And it just sounds like he's a new player this year. It sounds like he's kind of, he knows what it's like to be an NFL right tackle now. He's gone through it a year. Now he's starting to gain confidence. And a guy like Thayer Mumford with all the size, the talent, the measurables, if he can learn how to pick up stunts and identify blitzes and play sound technique, I think the Raiders might have something in Thayer Mumford.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. But to finish out the O-line competition, Brandon Parker is going to have to beat out Justin Herron for that third swing spot, that third spot, that tackle spot. So that's another battle that's happening, a battle within the battle, that O-line, that right side. So like Brandon Parker is another guy. Like I don't know if Raider Nation's super high on. He's a good guy.
Come on. No, they're not super high on him.
They're not super high, but he seems pretty cool, man. Like I seen him.
He's a cool dude. Yeah, Simone Raider.
And Simone Raider, I believe. Yeah, shout out to him. And yeah, he seemed like a pretty down to earth guy. So like, hey, man,
has nothing to do with the guy. Nothing to do with the guy. I'm just talking strictly on the field.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we want the best players out there. But that's the competition over there. That's another competition that's happening in training camps. That swing spot with Parker and Justin Herron. But yeah, man, that pretty much wraps up the offensive training camp update. Obviously, we got the joint practices. The Raiders were off the last couple of days, and then now the next couple of days they'll be having the joint practices with the 49ers. And then a preseason game over the weekend. So it's going to be a nice little week of Raider football. It's going to be a lot of news, and we'll talk about that this Saturday too. This upcoming we'll have a live show. Now I know this is a recorded show, but we're going to have a live show. It's going to be this Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. We're going to have a really good show with all the news that's going to be coming out of Raiders training camp with the joint practices, and obviously we'll talk about the upcoming 49er and Raider game. Even though it's a preseason game, there's a lot to talk about, man. The players,
there's a ton
who we're going to be seeing playing, and we'll react to that as well. But we have a nice little segment coming up, man. We wanted to start today, and we're calling it. Let's see if I could bring it up. In other news, meaning Derek Carr.
Oh, here we go,
man. Hey,
we're opening up that bag.
It's funny because I was talking to Ray, and I was like, at the end of the day, like every Raider fan, I don't care who you are, you guys are going to be keeping tabs of what's going on in New Orleans. So when we pay attention to, because he was the Raider quarterback for 9 years, so I'm definitely going to talk about it, but. But you brought something to my attention, Ray. You said there was an article about, and shout out to Phil Robinson.
It's a great article. It was a really good article, really well written. So shout out to Phil.
Yeah, shout out to Phil, man. And I'll put it up here, and we'll talk about it just for briefly. Here, share screen, boom. And he talks about, obviously Josh McDaniels and him as a head coach, and obviously he brings up Carr and how Q Myers. Shout out to Q Myers. There you go. There's a shout out right there. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
All right. So Q Myers, host of the Locked On Raiders podcast, he says received some information from trusted sources about how things used to run in training camps under John Gruden. On his podcast, he implied quarterback Derek Carr's confidence and fortitude were so easily shakeable that defenders were told not to pick him off in camp practice. Additionally, Carr lived in a red jersey, meaning he was off limits. Don't touch. Man, that's crazy. Let's just talk about that real quickly. I'm gonna get into some of the other things that he also says, but man, how do you feel about these comments?
Well, how does a defensive unit perform when they can't go and intercept passes all camp? You see, there's a common theme of how this could actually hurt the Raiders defense for years now. Mm-hmm. If this report is true, and I would lean to say that these are credible sources.
Yeah.
If these reports are true, how much has that put a damper in the Raiders defense and the ability to go out there and create turnovers, something that the Raiders defense has absolutely struggled with in recent history. And the fact that your quarterback isn't touchable, you can't go out there and intercept his passes, and now to put that in hindsight, now look at what look at what they're doing now. You know what I mean? They're letting the team go out there and create turnovers. They're going out there and putting Jimmy G in uncomfortable situations. He's not off limits. You can see Max Crosby and Jimmy Garoppolo getting into it. You see a team buying in, talking about how Jimmy G is one of the guys. He brings swagger. So when you practice like this, it has long-term effects on the team.
And Phil, man, he says it right here. He says, there's an expression, practice makes perfect. Professional athletes are creatures of habit.
Yep.
Unfortunately for the defense, they may have been forced into practicing bad habits.
Ooh, that's a huge statement. And that's very well articulated too. Unfortunately for the defense, they may have been forced into practicing bad habits. That has been the theme of the Raiders defense for years now.
Mm-hmm. Gruden had a lifetime supply of passes to give to Carr, whether it was because they were neighbors or because Carr was just his guy. Gruden allegedly never criticized him in front of his teammates. The former Raiders head coach gave the impression Carr could do no wrong, even choosing him over Tom Brady the year he won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. So, I guess you can see how Carr clashed with Josh McDaniels, if this is true.
And if you could go back, Raider fans are going to hate me. If you could go back knowing the season that we had, would you have went and got Tom Brady over Derek Carr?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because, because then we could have traded him and we would have got like a first back. But, hindsight is 2020, man. Like, we didn't know that.
And the John Gruden situation is interesting, too, because John Gruden obviously being tied in and everything that we're talking about, he's over there with the New Orleans Saints in full New Orleans Saints gears. He's got an offensive play calling sheet. Like, he's in the building, and I forget the term that they're using for it. I forget. It's kind of slipping my mind, but essentially he's unpaid, and he's just in there to help assist. And it's just, I think that's a situation to follow because John Gruden has been winning these court cases against the NFL and against Roger Goodell. The fact that he's on the Saints, he doesn't have to get paid. He's in Saints uniform. He's got an offensive play sheet. Mm-hmm. That's just something to keep track on because I think John Gruden could be back in the NFL sooner rather than later.
Yes, it's funny that you mentioned that because shout out to Mo Moten. He had a great tweet where he had like an NFL prediction. He said if Dennis Allen pretty much struggles right off the gate, he sees John Gruden coming back to the NFL if he gets fired and taking over for the Saints, which, obviously that's just crazy to think about, but it's crazy possible. Things happen. You know what I mean? Crazier things that has happened. But yeah, this is a very interesting article, man. Shout out to Phil, man. Great article, host of Unfiltered Truth.
And if you guys haven't, man, make sure you guys go follow him on social media platforms and make sure that you go to the website and read these articles. He does a phenomenal job covering the Raiders, so it's definitely something you don't want to miss.
Also, to continue in other news, I read this and I thought it was interesting, and we'll expand on this segment a lot more. But we just wanted to focus on things that caught our eye. And in this article, in this report, keeps sliding. Eric Bieniemy is getting called out by head coach Ron Rivera. I mean, in my opinion, he is. Like, if Ron Rivera shared Tuesday, can you see this? I don't know if it's big enough. Let me just make this big enough for whoever's watching.
I still see the article about Derek Carr up.
Oh, okay. My bad.
You're good.
Let me go ahead and share this tab instead. Okay. Do you see it now?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So pretty much, Ron Rivera shared Tuesday that some Washington Commander players have expressed reservations about Eric Bieniemy's intense coaching style. By doing so, the head coach put his new offense coordinators in rigidity in. I don't know if I can pronounce that correctly. In the spotlight. Yeah, they were just a little concerned. Rivera said of the players who have approached him regarding Bieniemy. So I thought it was interesting. It's like, why, as the head coach, why are you making these types of comments out loud?
Well, I mean, when you look at the Commanders organization as a whole, this is a organization that is on fire and it's coming down. And there's a lot of fires trying to be put out within that organization. I feel a few ways about this. I feel like, one, as far as a player perspective, and you alluded to this good, so I'll let you kind of explain this, but the fact that players are going to Ron Rivera and complaining about the intensity around that organization when you have an organization who has not won anything in a long time. Now that's coming from us as Raider fans talking about this. There needs to be a standard raised, and it's going to be ugly. It's going to be hard. It's going to be intense. But these were reports that were out about Eric Bieniemy prior to him getting hired as a coordinator. These are issues that had followed him, and the reason why he stayed in Kansas City under Andy Reid were these concerns about his character. So kind of allude to why maybe players would be going to Ron Rivera, because I thought you made a good point.
Yeah, and then, he says here, so pretty much I guess somebody in the media asked him, it was a response to a question whether players have struggled to adapt to Bieniemy's fever. And they have, Rivera began. One of the biggest things is I had a number of guys come to me and I said, hey, just go talk to him. I said, I understand what he's been trying to get across to you. And I think as they go and they talk and they listen to him, it's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a whole different approach. Another part of Rivera's message, which came 3 days before Washington's preseason opener at the preseason opener at Cleveland, the need for adjustment isn't solely on the players. So even though he goes on to explain, but look, you got Jamar Charles. I love EB. I know he coached him, but I know one thing: he can take another level though.
Yeah, and you know what? We don't know the intensity. Maybe he does go a bit too far to where it's kind of out of control. But especially if you have guys like Jamal Charles coming out and saying that. But again, these were the reports coming out before they were ever hired. Why he never landed a head coach job, because these were concerns that organizations had about him.
Yeah. And I just think that it's just, I don't know. I just thought it was weird, man. And you mentioned that, hey, there might be some dysfunction coming from the Washington team, Washington Commanders. They got new ownership now. Maybe Rivera subconsciously fears Eric Bieniemy might take his spot, possibly.
Oh, that's definitely in the works.
You know what I mean? New ownership probably wants a new head coach in there, and most likely a lot of new owners maybe want like a guy that they want to choose. Maybe Bieniemy might be a guy that can possibly take his spot, because
that franchise is a dumpster fire.
Yeah. But I think the new ownership might be a sign for them.
Yeah. That's a good start for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And Bieniemy he's a guy that just came in. He has all the resume of being on the top offense, Super Bowl winner with the Chiefs. So if he's able to turn around that offense, and then you got Rivera talking about like him coaching, how his coaching style is, like, why would you even make that comment? You just should have, I don't know. I thought it was weird. But yeah, man, that pretty much finished up the segment.
Yep.
With in other news. So be on the lookout, man. We're going to be doing this more often, man. We love Raider football, but we're fans of football too. So we're going to talk about other news that's happening around the NFL. We'll make it quick. We know what we're here for.
Of course,
the Raiders, obviously,
and it kind of related to the AFC West, right? Former offensive coordinator with the
AFC
Chiefs
West,
and Carr. So just kind of keeping in the loop with the changes that have been made in the AFC West.
Yeah, facts, 100%. But yeah, man. Hey, man, it's been a great show, man. We just wanted to come in, just talk about the recent updates in training camp. Obviously, we got the 49ers coming to town, joint practices with the Raiders, and obviously the game coming up, man. And we're gonna have a live show, and we're gonna get into what happened in joint practice after the next couple of days happen. But what are you expecting from these practices?
I just want to see him go out there and compete. I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo go out there and find success against his former defense. Yeah. I'm not going to panic if there's turnovers. Again, they're going to be working stuff that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be forced to get better in this offense. But I really want to see the momentum of this defense. I want to see these guys fly around. I want to see these guys continue the trend of not just intercepting Jimmy Garoppolo or rookie Aidan O'Connell or Brian Hoyer, journeyman quarterback. I want to see them go out and cause turnover against San Francisco. And not only in joint practice, I want to see them translate that over into week 1 of the preseason. So I want to see them get it done in practice. And then I want to see them go out there and get the hand on the football on the defensive side, whether that's punching the football out, strip sacks, interceptions. If the theme of this year is turnovers, that's what I'm looking for this preseason.
Hey, I couldn't say it better myself, man. I'm looking for, like you. Hey, you pretty much said. I'm looking forward for them to go against different players, different schemes. Hey, this is a Super Bowl contender that they're going against, and they've been like that for the last few years. So I think that this is going to be a good test for them. And the good thing is, this is not going to be the only joint practice they're going to be having. I think they're going to be playing the Rams, I think, next week.
Yep.
I think they have some joint practice coming up with the Rams as well. So that's, iron sharpens iron. You got some teams coming in, and this is where the starters actually come in and play. And that's going to be interesting to hear the news of, you hear Davante Adams going against their best DB, and he's cooking them. Yeah. But I know what Davante Adams is going to do. I want to see what some of these young developing players do. I want to see what these guys that need to take that next step do. So I'm going to be excited, and we're going to be here to talk about it on Saturday. We're going to be previewing the 49ers and Raiders game, as well as talk about what happened in joint practices. But any last thoughts? Oh yeah, man. Oh, before you say anything, man, make sure to hit that like button, y'all. We forgot to remind y'all, man. Hit that like button, man, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Make sure to hit that button. And also, Raider Ray has a channel as well, and we switch off every week. So you want to make sure you're subscribed to both channels. So then every time we go live, you'll be well aware that when you hit the notification bell as well. So make sure you hit those buttons. And man, we appreciate everybody watching. This is something new. This is my first time that we actually recorded a show, which is cool. It's a different it's a different feel, because usually I'm like, hey, what's going on in the chat? How's everybody doing? But we'll be back to do that on Saturday, man. Just be on the lookout. And make sure to hit the notification bell, man. But any last thoughts?
Nah, man. Raider Nation, I'm excited to see you guys on Saturday. I think it's going to be a good show. I think a lot of people are going to tune in. Make sure you subscribe to both channels. Run up the likes. We don't really ask much of anybody. We just ask that little support. It takes us a long way. And we're growing, and we got a lot of big plans coming for this season. So overall, Pharoah, I'm excited. Pads are coming on. We're going against another team this week. So I'm looking forward to some Raiders football.
All right, Nation. Appreciate y'all coming through, man. Peace.
Great Pharaoh. The gift of Troy is a fabulous fabric from the land of the 5 rivers.
Thoughts for the win coming into
believed that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future.
Just win, baby. Hello? You play to win the game.